Cooper Flagg entered the year as one of the most hyped prospects we've seen in the college game in a while, and as a rising 18-year-old, he lived up to and even exceeded some expectations in leading his team to the Final Four and ultimately becoming just the 4th freshman to ever win National Player of the Year. As a listed 6'9" wing with a 6'11" wingspan and the 2nd youngest player in the class, Flagg produced at a wildly impressive rate. He put up about 19, 8, and 4 on nearly 60% true shooting. He led Duke in every major statistical category, and to add to that, he had the 10th highest BPM ever in Bartorovic's database and the 3rd highest for a freshman, behind just Zion and Anthony Davis. Now, there are questions in just the heights that he could possibly reach as a creator, but his ability to make an impact in all facets of the game from the wing forward spot make him this year's #1 overall pick and one that has a chance to change the direction of a franchise. Now, we could start in a lot of places, but Flagg's performance and track record as a defender make up a lot of his initial appeal. He wasn't quite as loud with his impact this year in comparison to the elite standard he set prior, partially because of the role that he had offensively and also some of his front court mates helping him out there, but he was still great. He graded out as one of the most impactful defenders in the country and projects favorably overall. His combination of physical tools, ground coverage, and feel for where he needs to be on the floor is among the best that you'll see, and it's helped make him a stout help defender who makes plays regularly. He averaged about 3 total stocks a game with very good block and steal rates. He projects well playing passing lanes, seeing plays develop weak side, and being someone that offenses always have to account for. He's also a big threat as a secondary rim protector, and I think he could even do more of that in the league. His ground coverage and athleticism to get to spots in the air is key, but the timing and feel is what's most impressive and what makes it projectable. Whether he's seeing a post-up develop or a driver getting an advantage topside or on the opposite block, or if he's the low man taking chances away from the roller, or even a few going rogue just to make a play or in transition, he does it frequently and should be among the best wings and forwards at it in the NBA, and that combined with the work that he does as a possession finisher on the glass make his immediate value pretty easy to see.
Crossover by Davis. Good go. What a pass. What a block. Flagg got it. Lubin couldn't finish it. Cooper. 3 minutes and change gone in the opening half. Hammond inside. Poteet.
Taking on SMU. Chris Carroll coached the team and got his first win as the Duke head coach.
And he rolling inside. Flagg with the
5 minutes into the second half. Duke by 11. Burton no, and good screen by Van Allen Lubin. And Cadeau kind of turned it into.
Now, he's also a capable defender on ball and in space, but he is much closer to the Scotty Barnes variety than he is, say, a Pete Kawhi. He's scheme and matchup versatile and should be able to guard most NBA wings. He can switch pretty much wherever you'd want and hold his own, and that should only improve as he naturally becomes a better athlete over time. He contains and contests well, he covers ground and does a great job of using his length to bother around the rim, and though he can still use some polished defending ball screens, he's agile enough to feel good about him defending either side in the pick and roll down the line. Now, I don't think he'll be that next lockdown guy you just throw on any perimeter player and expect an off night, but when you have someone barely draft eligible showing up in college basketball with that level of feel and size, and one that limits mistakes to the degree he does, it makes his ceiling and room for growth pretty high overall on defense.
Tonight off the bench. Mayo behind the back. He and Flagg doing some dancing out top.
Back for Sellers. He can heat up with anybody in this conference.
Well, she has racked up the frequent flyer miles the last 2 weeks. Khan's brother, Cager, and Kinston were both in the Wisconsin State Championship game. So Sherry flew from Raleigh to Wisconsin.
Close to Cooper Flagg's favorite NBA player, who happens to be celebrating his 27th. Going to push the middle of that league up.
Yeah, Pittsburgh off to a great start. Miami's got another really good team.
Notre Dame, Louisville looks like he brings Isaiah Evans off the bench. Slim, who had 19 points to lead the Blue Devils.
Now, there's a lot to get to when talking about Flagg's offensive game, and I'd say he actually became more impactful on this end over the course of the year, which I wouldn't have expected to happen so quickly. He went back and forth between being a play finisher on the wing to the team's lead initiator and was effective as a scorer in multiple ways, and through that he showed either projectable success or longer term promise in most spots with few weak points, and we'll start with his most natural abilities as more of an off-ball threat. He had a slower start from 3, but he took off and ended up at around 39% off the catch. It wasn't the highest volume, but he showed himself to be a reliable threat, whether it was above the break, playing in the corner or wing off of a driving kick or a pick and roll. And as they got well into the season, you could count on him to knock it down at a respectable clip. The caliber of shooter he is still in question considering his priors and not being a high volume guy, but the improvements in making his mechanics more repeatable and never hesitating to take what was given was a real positive. He also did his share of work as a cutter. He has solid feel for where the gaps are and attacks them well, and also executed their sets. And given his background as more of a forward, he is a natural as a roll man and post threat, and finished at a solid clip in these situations, especially on empty side looks. This is a pretty easy way to keep him involved and unlock his ability to operate out of the middle of a defense, and if and when he plays with someone that demands heavy attention on ball screens, he's definitely going to eat here given what he's capable of with the ball. He's also been effective in transition, turning defense into offense, both running the floor well and going coast to coast himself. Duke was actually one of the slower teams in the country, so we didn't see a ton of this as a unit, but when they did run, it was there, and in the right spot, I think he could shine even more. So from the shooting abilities and work as a cutter, roll man, and transition scorer, there's a lot there for him to impact the game as a complement, and he did most, if not all of it, efficiently.
The force, and it's off the side of the backboard. That is not what Carolina wants. It gets Duke out in transition.
Now, where his most significant upside resides is in the ball skills and improvements as an overall creator and playmaker. He's an effective straight line driver and does a very good job of attacking shifted defenses and using fakes and jabs to create an angle. And from there, he's used his frame well to first get into the paint and then also shield off defenders to give himself a good chance at converting. The handle is still a definite work in progress, and we'll get to more of that later on, but it's at least functional enough to get to the bucket and free throw line at a consistent rate. He also became one of the most effective pick and roll scorers in the country. Nearly 20% of all of his possessions were here as a pick and roll ball handler, and of those with at least 100 possessions on the year, he ranked in the top 20 in points per possession, right in front of guys like Javon Small and Bennett Sturts, though his was only at about half the volume. He showed he was able to set up a ball screen and attack downhill first and foremost, and then also get to the occasional pull up when the opportunity was there. And while he wasn't super efficient off the bounce overall like most guys, he was a lot better than I think his reputation is. He shot 36% off the dribble, a lot of which were mid-ranges, which you can debate how much you like that, but the comfort here, isolating on the wing or facing up in the mid-post, or getting the shots off of 1 or 2 dribbles and also hitting a couple turnarounds was all really impressive, and to me it indicates that there's long-term potential to keep building and stretching out his game to the three-point line. Now, in saying that, he actually did shoot over 40% on pull-up threes too, so even with the improvements to his handle and overall polish being necessary to continue to grow as a creator, he was more effective than a lot of guys who are sold or have been sold as big time shot makers, and that's a big portion of what's quickly helped raise the ceiling on who he can be in the league and creates yet another avenue for success as a scorer.
From the line now, 11 points for Arizona. They're down 1. Flagg kind of taken over.
Will pull up and fire.
And no, secured by Gillis of Duke. Flagg pushing, looks at the clock, fires a 3.
I'm stupid Flagg time. Whether it's a pass or whether it's a jump shot.
Flagg gets it up there, and
The NCAA tournament, they have been as good as any conference. It'll be an interesting year in the league as Flagg lays it in.
Cooper Flagg with a touch, spins and gets 2.
Now, Coop has long been a compelling passer. He's always shown great feel and a knack for making the right play, but his growth as an overall playmaker impressed throughout the year. All the simple plays and stuff that gives the team flow, like making the one mores, making plays in the middle of a zone, or throwing a head-to-head in transition, that was there in abundance. There aren't many times you'll see him force or miss simple reads to find his own shot, and that's pretty rare for someone his age, even as talented as his supporting cast was. Now, the other stuff is where I was most impressed. Like we mentioned, he was basically this team's point guard for a big portion of the time, and had the most responsibility with the ball he's ever had in his career. He did a very good job of making the proper play after creating an advantage and getting a paint touch, or capitalizing on a good screen and dive from the roll man. He threw plenty of lobs to Malawach and Gongba as he toyed with and manipulated the last line of the defense regularly, and generally there's not many 6'9" guys as good at making those plays on the interior in the half court as he is and was. He's also been good at reading the low man and delivering skips and using ball fakes to free up opportunities on the perimeter. He's not the most versatile passer yet. It's all fairly basic outside of some manipulation, and he'll take time adjusting off the live dribble, but for the most part he was effective on time and found his shooters without hesitation. How he continues to grow and develop as a scorer will dictate how big of a threat he is as an overall passer and playmaker, but he's continuously shown that it'll be a strength of his in whatever way he's used, from being more of a connective guy up to initiating some offense.
Flagg splits it. No look. James in the corner, wide open. Swing it. Flagg. He's one-on-one with Roberts. Flagg. Head and shoulder fake. Flagg. Nice pass. Drops it inside for Brown.
Flagg as well. Absolutely. Yeah. Very few things is important about shooting.
Gets it across. Gillis from the corner. Got
4
it!
minutes into this one here at Cameron. Flagg posting. The immediate double. Open is Proctor. Count.
Now with Zach Austin going down,
Will get much more of an opportunity.
Flagg on a double. Nice pass.
22-point lead for the Blue Devils. Flagg draws a double. Kicks to Knipple.
The last part of what makes Flagg such a compelling prospect is his motor and competitiveness. It's a difficult thing to quantify, and I think we collectively tend to notice those who are expressive more than guys like Kawhi or Tim Duncan or Jokic in terms of competitiveness, but Flagg does have that it factor you're looking for from a #1 pick. He has a certain level of tenacity and attention to detail that's turned into expansion on the court, and while I try to limit the intangibles talk given I'm not there to have a personal account of every player's makeup, this has long been a separator for who he is.
He's had success taking on Malawach at times. Good pass fake. Withers has it blocked by Flagg.
Now, it's important to understand, for someone as well-rounded as Cooper Flagg, his improvement areas are a little more pointed to stardom and maximizing his potential rather than contribution, as it is even for many other lottery picks. So even with the progress he's made as a ball handler and playmaker over the last couple years and throughout his freshman season, he's still got a need for improvement. As we mentioned, his handle is functional right now, which matters, but he'll need to continue tightening it, adding comfort in his counters and in handling ball pressure. He tends to default into using physicality and spinning to create angles in close, which isn't all bad. It's just not as easy in the NBA, and the help is smarter. So being able to turn more of these into cleaner angles and advantages downhill will be key. Now again, there is some function to it, and he's in a completely different stratosphere than he was coming into the season, but this will determine whether he's someone that can dictate playoff series and seasons, or someone that's best off as a #2 in terms of creation and offensive impact, which wouldn't be bad either. It's obviously just less threatening.
to me, he can't guard me off the bounce. So a quick crossover, boom, and all of a sudden, Cooper finds himself at the
So Malawach on the bench, James in the locker room, Flagg the crossover.
Coming into the year and even into the early parts of the season, I was pretty confident in Coop's touch and efficiency at the bucket, but that did wane quite a bit and is maybe the only true area I think he actually needs to improve. Long term, I'd still comfortably bet that he'll figure it out, and when you're 6'9" and aren't a bad athlete, that's a much less steep curve to improve, but he hovered just below 60% overall, which can be defensible, but the layups and half-court numbers left too much to be desired from someone his size. He's willing to use his left, which is half the battle, but he hasn't been very effective, especially when extending. He has a tendency to sort of flail his body back against contact, which led to some attempts that were tougher than they needed to be. And overall, I think adding different types of finishes will be key for him, specifically playing off of 1 foot. It's usually the opposite for most young players, but being less predictable to beat the help to the bucket and navigate those those tight spaces will open up a lot in the future. Now, out of the other pretty long list of players in this class who were below average at the rim, Coop's reasons are significantly less concerning, but it is a vital area, and had he been just slightly better here, say 65, 70th percentile in points per possession, they might not lose a single game, and then he's in a conversation that only guys like Bill Russell, Kareem, and Bill Walton can get in.
Flagg turns on the Jets, takes it
And while Flagg eventually became a good shooter over the course of the season, I would still say becoming more consistent and undeniable here is on his list. It's obviously a much different starting spot for someone that shot nearly 40% off the catch, over 35% off the bounce, and mid-80s from the free throw line. Those are indicators that are just difficult to argue with for his long-term projection. But if I'm nitpicking, he only took about 7 per 100 possessions. He doesn't have the most convincing priors, and though he'll enter the league drawing closeouts just because of who he is, he'll need an uptick in volume eventually, so he's still, I guess, somewhat questionable, but if he can become a knockdown threat, it's going to be pretty difficult to keep him from scoring in the mid-20s every night. Now, I've kind of felt this way with a few prospects over the years, but there's not really much else to pick at. Sure, he's not walking into the league as the best player and can get better at everything, including some of the perimeter defense and closeouts, which got sloppy from time to time, and you can attribute that to a number of things, but he is super limited when it comes to clear negatives, and even with stardom still having a checklist that he'll need to reach, he's going to enter the league with far more tools to get there than most others would. Now, how Cooper Flagg's offensive game evolved so quickly changed my expectations on where he could realistically go. He's someone that can take on really any role, but should eventually emerge as a wing playmaker and land between top option to like a well-rounded number 2 on a good team. Defensively, he'll match up against 3s and 4s and be more of a disruptor and roamer than he is a wing stopper, but still frequently in the all-defense conversation. And for all that, I think he can be an all-NBA top 15 level guy given his current trajectory, and how much his handle and shot making progresses will have a big say in that possibility. But even on the lower end, I'd be pretty surprised if he wasn't impactful enough to be a sometimes all-star. He's not a Wemby level prospect to me, but a tier below that is reasonable. Now, as for fit, he's the type of guy you build with, so we can make an entire video on how he'd look with each team, but I really like the on-paper fit of him in Charlotte. He's kind of the opposite of what they have now, and I think he'd immediately elevate and complement guys like LaMelo and Brandon Miller. Washington with Sarr and Coulibaly, and those guys would be a fun young core, especially defensively. And then teams like Utah and Brooklyn are in drastic need of a guy. San Antonio would be kind of greedy at this point, but that would be terrifying for the league. So again, you make room for someone like him, and I don't think he'll have a tough time figuring it out wherever he lands. Now, it's hard to find a great comparison for some guys, and that's kind of the case for Coop. I do see the possibility of a Jason Tatum with how well-rounded he is, how he controls games and makes an impact on both ends from the wing spot. Tatum was a little more naturally gifted as a perimeter scorer through his teens into Duke, but that's probably the one I think Flagg could resemble the most, even if he doesn't reach that same shot-making peak Tatum is at now. I also think guys like Franz and Scotty Barnes are solid middle to lower end references. Coop is just more advanced and less flawed than they were coming out. And there's also a little Scottie Pippen in there too. So not a one-to-one, or am I saying he's a combination of everything they are to make this created player, but that's how I think his game could at least look. Cooper Flagg's combination of physical tools, production, feel, and continued growth in his skill set has made him one of the most compelling number 1 picks we've seen recently. He's not perfect, but when an 18-year-old is as impactful in every part of the game on a Final Four team as he was, there's naturally going to be a lot of stuff to fall back on, even if the creation doesn't come fully to fruition. He's most of what you want from a player in the modern game, and whoever lands the number 1 pick will be in a significantly better position than they were before.